I don't just tell black secrets. I tell white secrets too, because we all family. They don't lie to some of us, they lie to...
Big deviance is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be...
To have a conversation that's not being had. And I'm really sorry that these conversations are being had by a comedian. I wish too that it was a religious leader of some kind having this conversation, or somebody's politician talking about.
Before the scandals, before the viral clips, before the world decided Katt Williams was crazy.
I'm not doing this. You are not going to get a black man, a real black man, to agree to do.
There was a man who stood alone against one of the most powerful machines in entertainment. His story doesn't start with fame, it starts with fire. Katt Williams, born Micah Sierra Williams, grew up like so many other gifted but restless souls. A kid from the South who learned early how to make people laugh, not because life was funny, but because laughter was survival. He wasn't chasing clout. He was chasing truth, and that truth was often ugly. As the 1990s faded into the early 2000s, Hollywood was in a golden haze. Sitcoms, studio deals, black comedians finally breaking through to mainstream success. It looked like progress. But behind the red carpets and press junkets, there was a quiet rule. Stay in line, play your part, and never, ever talk about what really happens behind the scenes. Katt Williams refused. He wasn't supposed to. He wasn't supposed to question the system that made him rich. But the same system that gave him his spotlight also built the shadows he would one day expose. Beat, low music rise. At first, he was unstoppable, a hurricane of charisma and razor-sharp wit. His specials Pimp Chronicles and It's Pimpin' Pimpin' didn't just make people laugh. They made them think. He roasted hypocrisy, politics, racism, greed, the whole machine. But what most people didn't see was the price of telling the truth inside an industry that sells illusion. Hollywood loves rebels until they start telling real stories. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered that Katt was difficult. Studio execs stopped calling. Invitations vanished. Arrests started appearing out of nowhere.
Martin tried to put me in my first dress. You know, we get in that office and this fool pull out Big Mama's house too. I almost died. All I did was say, I want to punch it up so it's not offensive to real.
One after another, like clockwork. And suddenly, the narrative changed. Katt wasn't a genius anymore. He was unstable. But was he? Pause. Slow zoom in tone. In the years that followed, Williams began connecting dots others ignored. He spoke publicly about contracts that never favored the artist, about how black talent was being packaged, sold, and discarded by the same companies that claimed to celebrate them. He talked about exploitation, about spiritual corruption, about the price of fame that no one wanted to admit existed. To some, it sounded like paranoia. To others, especially those who'd seen the same things, it sounded like the first real confession from someone still inside the system. Soft piano enters. The deeper he went, the darker it got. Katt described Hollywood as a place where people didn't just lose their morals, they lost their souls. He said the real currency wasn't money or fame, it was obedience. And the moment you stopped obeying, the machine turned on you. For years, he kept working anyway, touring non-stop, selling out arenas, staying connected to the streets that raised him. But the press refused to show that side. Instead, they focused on mugshots, chaos, and breakdowns, the narrative that sold headlines and silenced his message. In interviews, he'd drop clues, sometimes funny, sometimes chilling. He talked about meetings where strange things happened, about contracts that came with invisible strings, about parties where the energy didn't feel human. Most people laughed it off. Others listened closely, because if even half of what he hinted at was true, it would explain why so many stars rise fast, burn bright, and disappear even faster. Music shifts low, suspenseful. In this world, power doesn't show itself in open daylight. It hides in deals, favors, and friendships that don't feel like choices. And for Katt Williams, every truth he told came with a consequence. By 2012, something changed. He started calling out specific names, people he once worked with, studios that owned his specials, even networks that edited his content. He said he was blackballed, not for failure, but for honesty. And maybe he was right, because the more he spoke, the more the media doubled down. They painted him as unhinged, unstable, dangerous. It was the oldest Hollywood trick in the book: destroy the messenger before people start listening to the message. Beat, fade to quiet. But beneath the noise, fans still believed him. They'd watched too many artists tell similar stories before vanishing. Dave Chappelle, Martin Lawrence, Lauryn Hill. Each of them stepped away at the height of fame, each saying, in their own way, that something wasn't right behind those closed studio gates. Williams wasn't running. He was fighting, even when it cost him everything. He once said, "I'm not crazy. I just see the world differently." And maybe that was the real threat, because what he saw, the contracts, the manipulation, the silence, was never meant to be exposed. Music rises, drums, faint crowd noise. When you peel back the glitter, Hollywood isn't a dream factory. It's a power plant, feeding off talent, burning through lives, and selling the illusion that success is freedom. Katt Williams had lived that illusion, and now he was dismantling it, piece by piece. On every stage he touched, he became more than a comedian. He became a mirror. And mirrors, in a world built on lies, are dangerous. Music fades to echo. Narrator, softly. This is where the story truly begins, with a man who saw too much, spoke too loud, and refused to bow. Because in a city built on silence, truth always sounds like madness. When a man like Katt Williams starts speaking truth, the first thing the system does is isolate him. They don't argue, they erase. They pull the plug on deals, close doors, and plant stories that paint him as a villain. Because in Hollywood, power doesn't argue. It rewrites the script. And that's exactly what began happening once Katt started naming names. Beat. He said too much on too many platforms. He spoke about how artists were being broken down mentally and spiritually, about how contracts were written to enslave, not empower. He said he saw the same pattern over and over again. A black artist gets rich, starts asking questions, and then suddenly becomes a problem. To most people, those were just interviews. To insiders, it was a declaration of war. Soon after, the coincidences started stacking up. Venues canceled his shows. Tour managers quit overnight. One night, he'd get arrested for assault. The next, the charges would mysteriously disappear. Music rises slightly, slow heartbeat sound. It wasn't about justice. It was about reputation. They didn't want to lock him up. They wanted to destroy how people saw him. Because in Hollywood, the worst thing you can be is uncontrollable. Katt wasn't the only one. Other voices, like Boozy Badass, Charleston White, and even comedians like Dave Chappelle, had started echoing the same warnings in their own ways. They weren't allies on paper, but they shared the same scars. Each of them had reached a point where fame wasn't freedom, it was surveillance. Every move, every mistake, every quote became a weapon. Slow fade in. Boozy's voice from an old interview. Boozy once said, "When you tell the truth in this game, they try to erase you." And he wasn't lying. Boozy had been dragged through headlines, legal fights, and smear campaigns just for speaking about the exploitation he saw in the music industry, the same dark rhythm Katt had been talking about in comedy. Both industries ran on the same script: build them up, use them, drain them, and move on to the next name. Slow music, emotional tone. Charleston White, too, came in loud, controversial, unapologetic. To many, he was just another voice stirring chaos. But behind that, he was doing something deeper, speaking about how the system feeds off Black pain and conflict. Every time these men spoke up, social media turned them into villains. Clips got edited out of context. Algorithms buried their messages, but pushed their worst moments to the top. Every headline turned them into caricatures, not human beings. And that's the point. Because when you dehumanize someone, people stop listening to what they're saying. Beat, silence. Back to Katt Williams. By 2016, he was practically a ghost in mainstream Hollywood. No more TV specials, no late-night interviews, no movie offers. But he was still filling arenas on his own. That independence, that refusal to depend on studio money, was his real rebellion. He didn't just walk away from the system. He built his own stage outside of it. And every night on that stage, he spoke about what others were afraid to say. He talked about the culture of humiliation, how the industry breaks people by turning their pain into entertainment. He talked about how mental health was being weaponized to silence truth-tellers. People laughed, but deep down they knew he wasn't joking. Music intensifies, strings build softly. This was the part the media never showed. The same man they called unstable was also feeding families, mentoring young comics, and fighting addiction quietly, with no cameras, no interviews, just faith and will. But Hollywood doesn't celebrate healing. It celebrates collapse. And when Katt refused to give them that collapse, they changed the strategy again. This time, they started using his own community against him. Podcasters, bloggers, YouTubers, they started pushing a new narrative. Katt fell off. Katt lost it. Katt's jealous of other comedians. It wasn't random. It was orchestrated. Because every empire needs a villain to distract the crowd. And Katt Williams became that villain, the truth teller turned target. Music drops, low tension. Meanwhile, the same machine kept rolling untouched. Award shows still smiling. Executives still rich. And the artists still chained to contracts they couldn't escape. Boozy kept fighting, publicly, emotionally, calling out the same structure from another side of the entertainment world. His pain, his arrests, his rants. People mocked them, but they were the raw scream of someone who saw the same machine eating his people alive. Charleston White, with his brash delivery and unpredictable outbursts, also became a strange kind of truth-teller. Some hated him, some feared him, but the ones who really listened heard the same echoes Katt Williams had been warning about years earlier. The message was simple: this world doesn't reward authenticity, it punishes it. Soft, reflective tone. It's a haunting truth, how men like Katt, Boozy, and Charleston get labeled as troublemakers while others who play by the rules get protected. Hollywood has always needed that balance, the compliant stars who shine, and the rebels who burn out to warn the rest. But what if those rebels aren't broken? What if they're the only ones still awake? Music builds, emotional, almost spiritual. Through all the chaos, Katt Williams never stopped performing. Every city, every crowd, every set was another chance to tell the truth disguised as a punchline. He didn't need validation from the machine anymore. He had a direct line to the people. And the people started listening again. Clips of his old interviews resurfaced, where he talked about hidden agendas, manipulated narratives, and the quiet war on free voices. Suddenly, those crazy quotes didn't sound so crazy anymore. They sounded prophetic. Slow beat, low piano. By 2020, a new generation was discovering Katt Williams, not as a fallen comedian, but as a whistleblower who saw the storm before it hit. Social media started dissecting his interviews. Fans made documentaries. His words became warning signs, proof that the system wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed. And while all that was happening, the same pattern replayed in the music world. Boozy was being silenced online, shadow banned for his raw opinions. Charleston White's accounts got flagged and taken down. Different industries. Same silencing. Same invisible hand. Narrator tone deepens. This is how it works. They don't need to jail you. They just make you invisible. And when the audience finally moves on, they win. But Katt didn't disappear. He adapted. He turned his pain into perspective. He turned isolation into independence. Every tour became a testimony, not just about Hollywood, but about the human spirit and what it costs to stay truthful in a world that rewards fake. Beat, quiet reflection. And through that pain, something remarkable happened. Other artists started standing up again. Comedians, rappers, influencers, people who once laughed at Katt began realizing he was right all along. They saw how media could twist a story, how cancel culture became a weapon, how fame could become a trap. And suddenly, the crazy man became the teacher. Music swelled.